this beautiful morning. But before that, I would like also to welcome our guests from Sweden. We hope you will enjoy our beloved and open archaeological museum here in Jordan. Dear guests, we are very proud of our partnership with Business Sweden today. This cooperation will pave the way for many activities in the future. However, for those who do not know the Jordan Strategy Forum, we are a think tank advocacy NGO that was established 10 years ago by a group of prominent private sector companies. Our mission is to amplify the role of the private sector in the sustainable development of Jordan. We do that through evidence-based research and productive economic dialogue between all stakeholders. Since its inception, Jordan Strategy Forum has worked on many policy papers to motivate positive change towards enhancing Jordan's competitiveness. Moreover, Jordan Strategy Forum has closely monitored the macroeconomic indicators, socio-economic related regulatory environment, as well as business climate and its attractiveness to international investors. So in a sense, Jordan Strategy Forum has always acted as a platform for constructive debates between the private and public sector, and has always been a good partner with national and international organizations with whom we discuss future opportunities to enable Jordan to realize its full potential. This event is actually a realization of those prospects. Dear guests, the activities of Jordan Strategy Forum would not have been possible without support of its members, who strongly believe in the forum's mandate. Today, members of Jordan Strategy Forum are more than 100 successful and responsible private sector companies. They represent different sectors ranging from micro, small, medium, and large enterprises. Dear guests and colleagues, the recently launched economic modernization vision is relying on the private sector to achieve higher and more balanced economic growth. Taking a closer look at the Jordanian private sector, one can tell that it plays a critical role in terms of its contribution to the national GDP, employment levels, public revenues, fixed capital formation, among others. We are proud that a good number of our Jordanian enterprises went internationally in terms of at least markets and capital gains. On average, in 2010, the private sector has maintained its share in the Jordanian economy. The proportion remains around 84 to 86% of GDP. In specific, the private sector plays an important role in the provision of infrastructure projects and services. This can be seen from the economic modernization vision, which calls for more than 40 billion Jordanian dinar in capital investments projects. However, access to finance is still one of the main impediments for both the private and public sector. Based on the SEK analysis, we can outline the following. The impact of total credit facilities on real economic growth is positive. When total credit increases, real GDP increases. The long-run elasticity is equal to 0.79%. This means that when credit increases by, for example, 1%, then real GDP increases by 0.79%. In addition to this finding, it is also worth noting that the sectoral distribution of bank credit does promote economic growth as well. In other words, the impact of bank credit to industrial sector construction sector and to general trade sector have positive impact on growth. Within this context, it's also worth noting that banks in Jordan do suffer from what is called the crowding out effect. In other words, the lending activity of banks to the government crowds out the private sector from credit market. It is evident that finance is a serious issue in Jordan. This issue has been highlighted in the economic modernization vision as specific initiatives were recommended to overcome this concern. Dear guests, our colleagues from Swedish Expert Credit and Swedfund are here today to present their findings financing model, and how such models can best benefit our Jordanian companies. We have also our colleagues from Scania who will present their success story in implementing Turkey's BRT project. Finally, I would like to thank our JSF member, Dr. Shahem El-Wer, who will facilitate the discussion afterwards. We hope you find our event beneficial and step forward toward building a successful network of partners in Jordan and Sweden. Allow me at this point to hand over to Shahem, who is going to facilitate our session today. Thank you.
The married amongst you will realize why I went to ask. It's always best to ask a woman for advice addressing a crowd or making a decision. Sabah al-Khair Jami'an, good morning everyone, thank you for being here. I'm going to be very brief in my remarks. We're very fortunate to have our friends from Sweden. I was just looking at serendipity, it was just happenstance that I was looking at Instagram this morning, and if you look on something called the language nerd, it showed you various words in Swedish and how you can pronounce them. And the word "you are right" is N-A with 2 dots on top of them, and "you are wrong" is also N-A with 2 dots on top of them. So if you hear they say now or a different intonation, I hope I'm right. The Swedish model is very interesting, I think, for us to learn from. I think we're often bombarded by what's happening in the US, and we were exposed to the Irish model only 2 weeks ago. So the Swedish model is an interesting example to look at and learn from. It bucks that trend in terms of the role of the state and how much taxes are imposed in that country compared to others. So, for example, if you look at Sweden, you'll see that the government revenue sometimes is a percentage of GDP or sometimes north of 50%, well over the OECD percentage of almost 40%. The role of what's called the welfare state is very high. For us here in Jordan, is this better? Sorry about that. If we look at Sweden, we see that although it's about 4 to 5 times larger than Jordan in terms of size, the population is very similar to Jordan. It's about 10 million people, 10.5 million people. And yet they've created quite a miracle there in terms of growth and development. So the GDP is about 650 billion, that's top 30 in the world. GDP per capita is about 60,000, that's about top 25 in the world. So that's something that we'd aspire to. And a lot of the work that they've done very successfully, we've tried to do, and we'll hear from SEK, which is similar to our Jordan Loan Guarantee Corporation. They've supported many of the massive companies that have grown to grow their exports very strongly. We know some of the companies like Ericsson, like Volvo, Atlas Copco, and other companies. So there are very interesting similarities, and we're looking forward to hear from our friends at Swedfund, at SEK, and Scania to learn from them. For us, I think the model is very interesting in terms of public spending, the role of the state, and just offering us a different model in terms of growth and development. And then us as Jordanians, hopefully this will give us an opportunity to pick and choose and say what works best for us. I think part of our culture and our history is Nivam al-Takaful. So we are very strong in things like a safety network, which is very strong in countries in Scandinavia and in Sweden. And sometimes we don't see that in other countries where there's just a different economic model. So we're very fortunate to have them here with me. I won't go on, but I think we'll hear a lot from them on pillars that matter a lot to us in Jordan and that we focused on at this forum. and I'm looking forward to hearing from them on things like female empowerment and how they've increased the role of women in the companies that they've supported, either in Sweden or abroad. That's a key issue for us here in Jordan, with the female participation rate in the labor sector being so low at about 15%. So that's something and an issue that we'd like to tackle. And then other areas they're focusing on a lot in terms of ESG and sustainable development. Those are also things that we're looking at in terms of climate change and making sure that our development is sustainable. So without further ado, I'd very much like to welcome our friends from Sweden to Jordan and to welcome them to the panel so we can hear from them, learn from them, and then we'll open, after the discussion, after the presentations from our friends, we will open the floor for some Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shan. A warm welcome, and I'm also very delighted to be here today and to open the Swedish delegation in Jordan. My name is Pontus Davidsson, and I'm a member of SEK, the Swedish Export Credit Corporation. And today I will introduce two sister organizations, EKN and SEK, to you. And I will talk about what those two organizations are doing and how we are supporting to drive a Swedish export credit throughout the world. EKN provides the guarantees to our banks and to us, and SEK provides the long-term funding for Swedish export-related transactions. In my presentation, I will go through how we are supporting various transactions throughout the world. I will show a few case studies. I will also leave the word to Scania to also go through a case study in more detail, and how we can actually make sure and support and replicate some of these transactions in this interesting country, Jordan. Just a few words. Historically, I've been working with international banks for 25 years. I recently joined SEK, and I've been working and arranging export credit facilities throughout the world over the last 10 years, and very much exposed to infrastructure, energy, telecom, and transport sectors. So I'm extremely pleased and extremely interested to hear your thoughts about how we can support the dynamics on the markets as well. When it comes to EKN, they support and promote Swedish export transactions, and they do this by insuring banks and companies against the risk of non-payment. They have export transactions in 130 countries throughout the world, and they have a history of close to 90 years. They are all financed by their guarantee fees. SEK, we have a 60-year history, so slightly younger version of our big sister. We finance Swedish exporters, their subcontractors, and foreign customers. And in this case, it could be public companies, private companies, or governments in various countries, such as Jordan. We have lending operations in over 60 countries. We have a lending portfolio of about $25 billion. We have a AA credit rating, and we are all supporting exporters in all sectors. And many of the exporters you will meet here today, and then of course are with us through the whole week here in Amman. And we are, on back of our strong credit rating AA+, we can then of course enable and offer favorable fixed rate loans to our exporting clients and to facilitate that to potential borrowers. So how does it work? The export credit system means that there is a Swedish exporter or a strategic EPC. An EPC in this case means equipment, procurement and construction partner who negotiate a commercial contract with a buyer. We normally have an international bank or a bank involved that has the relationship with the buyer, or if it's a public buyer, or the borrower, meaning if it's a potential Minister of Finance or a company that will be the borrower, that has a long relationship or a history with that counterparty. EKN will then guarantee the facility and the transaction that SEK will fund, and we will go into that in more detail later. But that's the short summary of how the system works and what we are doing. But it's very much a seamless execution, and it's all about the partnership, where we work very closely with the exporter, with the EPC, with the banks, plus EKN and SEK. I mean, just to give you what this means for a potential lender or a potential borrower, the benefit of the EKN guarantee that we normally give between 95 and 100% of guarantee exposure of the loan facility. This will enable the lender to benefit from a AAA Government of Sweden risk. It will also allow the SEK to offer an attractive fixed rate loan offering. That means that the Swedish exporting companies can offer this funding at very favorable rates. For the buyer and the potential borrower, this is also, besides the attractive financing, it's also diversified the financing sources for the buyer away from potential capital markets, from traditional bank debt or bank loans, and also it reduces the use of its own bank credit limits, given this is a new investor pool or a new initiative that we will support and set up. Just to give you a few comments on how an export credit structure would look in reality. Up to 50% of the local content could be, of a total contract value, could be financed under an export credit facility. 30% of that needs to be Swedish content of a total contract value. It's important to note that please engage with the bank, with us, and very early together with the exporter in the process, because we of course have sustainability requirements that are according to international standards, and here we're talking about environmental and social due diligence that is required very early in the process. So I think the earlier we are approached into the process, the better and the quicker we can close the transaction together. There of course are OECD guidelines that we follow, and being OECD compliant means that there potentially are certain restrictions on what kind of maximum tenure that can be applied, what kind of minimum interest that can be applied, as well as potential premium rates to be offered. I think just a comment on the tenure of the facilities, it typically varies depending on the actual underlying sector we're talking about, but from energy, transportation, and various infrastructure projects. Generally, the longer, you can have quite long tenures for those type of transactions. As an indication, we are offering a fixed rate loan that is called SEK, which is I'll touch upon later. Currently, given what's happened in the market dynamics recently, if the US dollar fixed rate loan with a repayment period over 8.5 years is around 5%, and the same tenor for a euro reference is around 3%. That gives you a little bit of an indication what we're talking about. On top of that, there will be a cost for premiums and bank arranging fees. So just to recap, the advantages with our Swedish export credit financing is that we have a diversification of funding sources for the buyer. We can finance a high amount, meaning that we can enable and allow up to 50% of the total contract value in local content. We can offer long maturities, and then we can offer this competitive interest through the zero system, which effectively allows the exporter and the buyer to completely tailor financing that is matching the underlying commercial transaction. We will, of course, very much engage and align and discuss very early with the exporter, where we can, provide an offer of that SER, allowing the commercial contract and allowing the cost of that financing to be certain at the time of signing. And that is normally a window of about 4 months, where the buyer and the exporter can negotiate the contract signing. When it comes to sustainability, I mean, we all know that Swedish companies are at the forefront to drive sustainability for sustainable solutions. And I think it's important how we, from an SEK and EKN perspective, can support that transition. And we are offering various type of sustainable financing options. By 2030, SEK has an ambition to have 50% of our balance sheet from green loan facilities. So a very ambitious goal, and we are aiming to use and work very actively with our partners to get that facilities arranged over the next 8 years. And the various options of financing that we can offer is traditional green loans, which effectively are in line with the EU taxonomy. We can offer social loans, which are relating to healthcare, medical, as well as infrastructure projects. And finally, we can do sustainability-linked loans, which are all linked to, for example, a borrower that has committed to reduce its carbon footprint in its production facilities. All these three type of facilities are linked to meet our overall objectives. Just a few words on our EPC initiative. I mean, as I mentioned, we have, and this is part of the Swedish trade and investment strategy. I mean, over the last 3 years, we've actively worked with Team Sweden, and Team Sweden is represented by today with Marcus and Håkan, to enable large EPC contracts and allow for global EPCs to use Swedish sourcing in its big projects throughout the world. And I will show you a few very interesting transactions that we've done in Africa, where we have used global EPCs and allowed Swedish exports that are historically maybe not that used to that type of arrangement to export very interesting products into those contracts. So Business Sweden, Swedfund, SEK and EKN are all the part of the Team Sweden, and we are of course very much working in symbiose with the global EPCs, the Swedish supplier network, as well as together with international banks to enable this type of various financing that we will show you. And in terms of the transactions that we've done, and that we are extremely, of course, very proud of, we did a very interesting project in Ghana a few years back, relating to the largest railway investment in Ghana since 1957. It's a close to 500 million euro facility. It was an EPC with Swedish suppliers involved. This created new jobs, and it allowed for sustainable transportation. We had a guarantee from the Swiss ECA as well as EKN. We funded the transaction together with the German bank, Deutsche Bank, who arranged it. We also did a very interesting, and very recent transaction in a complex commercial discussion, a complex commercial arrangement where we built a new infrastructure project with 1,000 solar electricity driven waterways in Ivory Coast. It was initiated by the Ivory Coast government, It was very much a project that also included EPCs with many new Swedish suppliers into that project. It was a financing that was done together with us and KfW, the German financial institution. Here, there is a mix of export credit as well as commercial term loan that was tied to the project. Very interesting project that is currently being finalized. And finally, on solar, Angola as a country has a very key ambition to move away from carbon, high carbon emission generation. In this case, they are looking to replace diesel generators, and they've now built, and they are building the largest ever sub-Saharan solar panel park in Angola, and it's currently taking place together with the EPCs, with the Swedish suppliers, and that's close to 500 million euro of financing guaranteed by EKN and funded by SEK. But that's also a very interesting, and this is a green loan facility, so allowing for the country to move away from historically diesel into solar panel projects. So I think that those three are very interesting. The fourth case study I will actually leave to Scania to present, but that's a project in Ivory Coast, a BRT project that we work with together with an international bank, delivering 450 buses into Abidjan. Very interesting, and I will leave that to Fredrik and Christina to outline and present more in detail. I think this is the short summary of what SEK and EKN are doing together. And of course, we are here all day and we're here all week, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to discuss and meet in person to discuss how we can collaborate and do things together. So thank you very much.
So I'd like to introduce Fredrik and Christina. We'll start with Swedfund first. So I'll introduce Hakan first to tell us a little about the work that Swedfund has been doing, particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa. And then we'll transition to Fredrik and Christina from SEK. Thank you. Sure.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for us to be here today, and thank you very much for arranging this and giving us this opportunity. My name is Håkan Dahlfors, and I'm from Swedfund. Swedfund is the development finance institution of Sweden. We're an entity fully owned by the Swedish state. And our mission is to reduce poverty by investing in sustainable businesses in emerging and developing countries. We base our work on two approaches, and one is to do investments in the private sector, in local private companies, but we also work with the public sector to support the development of new sustainable projects within infrastructure. As a development finance institution, we follow regulations by our owners, the Swedish government, but also international regulations. And one important aspect that we follow is that investments should always be additional. So if we should only do investment that otherwise wouldn't happen. If there are private funding available, we will not be involved. We have a growing portfolio in Swedfund. In 2021, we did new investments for roughly $110 million. This year, we will do about $200 million, and it will increase even further in 2023. And also last year's, our investment portfolio generated 239,000 new jobs, direct new jobs, excluding indirectly created jobs. We do not have a country priority list or a country strategy. But as mentioned, Sub-Saharan Africa is our key region, and about 60% of our investments are currently in Sub-Sahara. But we're always looking out for opportunities that are in line with our strategic sectors and that are in line with our criteria. And when assessing and screening new opportunities, we rely on our work on our three core pillars in our strategy. And those are impact on society, sustainability, and financial viability. Impact on society is what we want to achieve with our investments. And here we target job creation, reduced impact on the environment and on the climate, and increased tax revenue in the country. Sustainability is more on how we work with our investments. And here, decent working conditions is critical, as is the implementation of anti-corruption systems, environmental and social management system, and so forth. And last but not least, financial viability. As an investor, we need a return on investment. And at the end of the day, the companies need to be profitable in order for the long-term impact that we want to achieve. The investment organization within Swedfund has three key sectors that we focus on: energy and climate, financial inclusion, and sustainable enterprises. Access to electricity and to energy is a key driver for economic development and for poverty reduction. And since 2014, Swedfund has exclusively made investments in renewable energy. Most jobs are created in small and medium-sized enterprises, but these companies are often limited by the access to reasonable financing. And here we target this by working with and lending to banks, companies, and microfinance institutions that in their turn lend to small and medium-sized enterprises, entrepreneurs, and low earners. Sustainable enterprise is a new name for our sector. It used to be called healthcare, and hence our portfolio is mainly made of healthcare investments. Here we have investments that address access to healthcare services. We have investments in hospitals and clinics, vaccine production centers, cancer treatment centers, and so forth. But we're also broadening this sector to be more including additional initiatives that, for example, relates to digitalization and startups and innovative companies. We invest a lot via funds, and the funds in their turn, of course, invest in multiple private companies, but we can also do direct investments. We are never a majority shareholder, always a minority shareholders. And then in addition to equity and funds, we can also do loans. I also want to mention how we work with the public sector. And as you know, a big hurdle for sustainable development is the lack of bankable projects, and specifically the lack of bankable and sustainable projects. And here we work with the tool that we call the Swedfund Project Accelerator that can provide grant funding to generate a pipeline of sustainable and bankable infrastructure projects and pave the way for new investments. And here we specifically work with three sectors: energy, sustainable transportation, and water and waste. And with the energy sector, we work a lot with projects that increase access to electricity, but we've also seen that a big and important work relates to working with the electricity grid, to work with stability and efficiency in the electricity grid, in order to be able to increase access to electricity, but also to enable new investments in intermittent generation from solar and wind. A big part of our portfolio is also related to sustainable transportation. We work with all modes of transportation, trying to make them sustainable and affordable. but most specifically we work with urban transportation, promoting the development of new public transportation solutions, but also expanding existing ones, and supporting a green transition within urban transportation. And we also have a quite significant portfolio of projects related to access to water, working with wastewater management and waste management. And as mentioned here before, we work a lot together with our partners, Business Sweden, IKEA and SEK, and what we call Team Sweden. So this was a short presentation of what Swedbank can offer and our strategy. And I look forward to meeting you. I will be here and hope to be able to discuss some opportunities with you or answer questions. Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to ask our friends from Scania to come up. Scania is a company that's over 100 years old with over 50,000 employees, and they provide sophisticated transport solutions, which is you guys arrived very late last night, but once you drive through Jordan, you will realize that we need very sophisticated and smart solutions to our traffic problems. And you'll see our fast bus that may have made things better or worse, and it may be fast or slow. We'll let you decide on that one. But without further ado, please.
So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here together with Christina, our expert in finance solutions. She will also say a few words after I give you the examples that have been referred to by Pontus here earlier. I'm also here together with our regional director for Africa, Middle East and Central Asia, Mr. Pascal Sapone. And together with the representatives of our local representative in Jordan, the Abu Dhabi Group, Mr. Faid Nader and Maya Sweden. So thank you for being here supporting us, and I'm sure all of us will be more than willing to discuss any opportunities you might want to discuss with us afterwards. So let me quickly jump to the first slide here and speak about Scania projects around the world that have been made possible through the Swedish export credit system that Pontus was referring to here earlier. The projects I will refer to are big projects, governmentally led big projects, but with a blend of private participation also. So, how were these projects made possible? Well, first, just a few words about Scania. I suppose you might know what Scania is, but we're quite a simple company to grasp. We have been doing the same thing for actually more than 100 years, 131 years to be specific. We are one of the oldest companies in the automotive industry, and we have basically been doing heavy trucks and buses ever since we started. We did a little bit of bicycles and railway wagons, as you might see if you visit us in our museum, but we've stuck to the same thing, and we often got the question, why don't you make passenger cars? Why don't you make smaller trucks and so on? But I believe our strategy has been very successful because, if I may say it myself, I would say quite a few of our customers say the same. We are quite good at what we do, and I believe that is why we stick to the core products that we have been doing for such a long time. Well, we are present in quite a few countries across the world. We've focused on Europe, Latin America, that's where we really started our core activities, but we're also very strong across the African continent, in the Middle East and in Asia today. As I mentioned before, in Jordan we happen to be represented since about 2 years by the Abu Dhabi Group automotive section. Well, now if we speak, just before I speak about the specific projects, I want to explain a little bit the approach we have had. So we have been making buses for over 100 years, since buses existed, you could say, the early 1900s. But a bus today is not really enough. You need a system where the buses could run. This is a very good example, and I'll come back to it. It's from Bogotá in Colombia. But you see the buses are fit into a system where we also represent a strong advantage to the passenger cars being stopped in traffic congestions next to it. So how do we build up a bus system? Well, of course we have a bus as the center piece of it. That's what we manufacture ourselves, where we spend our engineering hours to develop. But we also realize that our off-takers, the end users, they need terminals, they need depots, they need ticketing system to collect the money, and they need passenger information system, they need fleet management system, and so on and so forth. And not the least, which is maybe the most important, they need their people to be trained. This picture, even though it might be a bit small, it's an example from Ghana, where we trained a group of 70 ladies to drive buses. This was something new, unheard of in the country before, and it became a big success. Actually, we were able to benchmark them against their male drivers at the end. And I'm happy to say, even though I'm part of the other part of the human beings, they were actually better drivers than their male colleagues. And we were able to measure that and scientifically prove that. So it's all a matter of training. And we believe that training could lift these projects that we could then offer you as a turnkey solution. We often have a biofuel or an environmental angle on these projects. Often because the customers are asking for it, and also because we as a company, we want to spread new and better technology to the world. This is an example from the UK, and you can see what the people are doing at home. And the good thing is that they're actually powering the bus with that. And to go back to Sweden, in Stockholm we have about 500 buses today running on biogas. And it all comes from a sewage water, which is a waste product that no one thought of using even in the past. Now we can make value out of it and power the buses with, I don't want to cite the name in this room to make you lose your appetite, but it's also the same principle as we use when we develop other biofuels, to use waste material that doesn't have a value, to try to bring in value to it and use it to run our vehicles. We'll come back to that, to the examples. If I start in Colombia, there are two cities actually that I want to cite here, where the export credit system has played a major role. The first one is Bogota, is actually at the bottom. And you can see how buses were running here before this project started. It was a complete mess. Today, buses are organized in a way that gives them the same capacity as a metro system. They transport thousands of people in one direction every hour. On the busiest line, there's a new bus coming every 10 seconds. So it's a very well organized system that works. I would like to say Swedish clock, but you say Swiss clock normally. It's a very smooth system with a very high capacity and very reliable. That changed the city. It changed the daily life for people. Cartagena is the other example. We did basically the same thing. You could also see before and after pictures. So a messy, unorganized, undisciplined way of running the public transport was turned into something that was actually very well structured and had a very high capacity. So how did the export credit system support this? I would say basically by the size and the scope of it. Since funds were available, they were able to invest in a much bigger system right from the start. So this has really supported the system to develop much quicker than it would have done otherwise. So thank you, SEK, for supplying the money for that. If I jump over to the African continent, we've done several projects in Africa over the past few years. The latest one is in Abidjan. That's a project currently being implemented. It was referred to here before by Pontus also in his presentation. And it's a very wide scope of this project. We've listed the different components here. Just to make a quick review of it, it's about 450 buses that are being delivered. Most of them are already in Abidjan, in operation. And There's also full service support that we're building up together with the local operator in Abidjan called Sopra. So we're developing their workshops, we're training their people, and equipping their workshops also to service the buses over their lifespan, which is 10, 15 years or more. The complete ITS system is also being newly introduced. It's a modern system that allows the operator to collect the money from the passengers and also keep a good control over their fleet and inform the passengers of where the buses are and where the transport capacity is available. We have also included a pilot BRT line in this project, which is over 12 kilometers, and we're working in partnership with a contractor who is building the actual infrastructure that is just being started. And that will showcase the BRT solution, which I know that Aman is also working very hard on, that has been deployed in Latin America since many years back, where the concept was invented. So it's basically that you make dedicated lines where the buses will run in a tram or metro-like way. We also have a biofuel component in this, and in this case, the biofuel will come from the seeds of the rubber trees, and that's a product that was never used in the past. So it's not about taking food production resources and make fuel out of it, it's about taking a residual produce that has not been used in the past. And we are starting a pilot phase of that to run the first buses on, and it's looking very promising also. It creates job opportunities, it actually reduces the dependence on fuel imports, and at the end of the day, the fuel could even be cheaper than fossil fuel. All financed also by a comprehensive export credit solution put together by IKEA and SEK and the bank that Pontus used to work for in the past, mentioned also before, Standard Chartered Bank. So that was a 10-year financing with 0% down payment up front and on very good credit terms. Christina will come back to that. So what are the advantages of this, say, more holistic view of a project where we include other components around the core product that we manufacture ourselves? Well, we believe that it could lead to job creation and competence development, that's obvious, but also a very sustainable long-term solution and financial viability of investing in a quality product, because you get very good finance terms and you pay it back over a longer time. So it would justify to buy a better solution from the beginning that will last for long, rather than buying the cheapest alternative. Also, as I say, here, promoting quality solutions. So that's the advantages we see, and I believe that was my last slide, so I will hand over to you, Christina. I'm trying to go back. I will not show all your slides. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us with you this morning, and thank you for this delicious breakfast. Just a few words then on the financing. When you buy a Scania vehicle, a bus or a truck, we would always try to organize financing for you. And we have different means of doing that. We have our own financing companies around the globe, and we serve most of the markets. So we do that with our leasing solutions. We have a hub in Dubai, especially for this reason, for this region. For the type of solutions that Fredrik was just explaining to you, a large investment, then we are so proud and happy to have Team Sweden as a Swedish company with us. So just as Dr. Jean said, we are a small country just like you, only about 10 million people. We are very reliant on our exports, and we need a very strong system, a strong state behind us. We have IKEA and SEK and Swedfund and Business Sweden and other entities, and you would really not notice them in the background if you buy our goods. We would organize this for you, But you should know that they are there, and they are supporting us, and they are supporting you. And we do this to make the best solution possible for the buyer. When we do financing with Team Sweden, we never come in between. There is no margin for Scania. So this is for you to have the best financing possible, and for us to be able to sell our products to you. Apart from the Swedish export credit system, we work with a large group of core banks. We work with the absolute best banks in the world. And when you buy Scania equipment, you would also be able to tap into our core banking network. So if you don't have an export credit bank already, we would be happy to introduce you to one of our banks. So now this is when it gets a little bit technical, but this is just to show you the structure of the loan. We would make a contract with you. We are in the gray boxes to the right. We could add here local supplies, we could add more exporters, whatever you need to make a project viable. So we could have multiple commercial contracts, and we could put them all under one loan facility. This example is then when a public corporation would be the buyer. And for a very large investment, we would recommend you to use Ministry of Finance as a borrower. And this is, we think, for a bus system or a large waste handling system or a large infrastructure project. This is the best solution. Can we do this without Ministry of Finance for a private corporate? We can, of course, but it's slightly different pricing. You have the commercial bank in the middle in the blue. That would be the party then discussing with the borrower, and we would be discussing on the commercial side with whoever is the buyer. We would make sure that the commercial contracts and the financing contracts align, and that we have the best solution for you. So investing in public transport. I like what you said, Dr. Jean, about the state, that maybe we are a little bit alike. We have a strong state. We rely in Sweden on the state providing for us healthcare, schooling, education, higher education, but also public transport. And public transport is a very good way to get people safely to and from work in a timely manner, to allow also vulnerable groups and ladies and elderly to travel safely. So we believe that this could be a solution for you if you choose to buy Scania vehicles. And you are very welcome to contact any of us in the Scania team, and of course Avocado Group, who is representing us here. So again, the Team Sweden, now I'm just mirroring what Pontus actually said before. Using this credit facility means that we can actually offer you larger amounts. We can offer you longer tenors, up to 10 years repayment term. We can offer you fixed interest rates. Now the interest rates are a little bit unstable at the moment. You know, we have a war in Europe, we have the COVID crisis and so on, and many geopolitical things that influence this. The interest rates, the SER interest rate was this high when we had the financial crisis. They will come down again. And the euro interest rate 2 years ago was 0.44% per annum. Now it's 3%, but it will come down eventually. And that was the last of my slide. Thank you.
Expertise here amongst us in some areas that you focus on, including renewable energy, some of the infrastructure work, the fast bus, private sector, public sector. So I'm going to open it up to the audience. I think that will make it a much more fruitful discussion. Please. And can I ask you just to please just your name and just a 1 second about your current location. I know you a lot of positions to go.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for JSF for organizing this session. And it's always a pleasure to see fellow Swedes here in Jordan and elsewhere doing great jobs. One of the things that attracted my attention was the focus on sustainable transportation. Probably you have noticed if you visited Jordan, especially in Amman, congestion is quite high, and we do have a very environment unfriendly transportation system that is heavily dependent on cars and trucks. One of the ideas that have been floated for quite a long time is to build a rail system in Jordan, and unfortunately it has not worked yet. I would love to see a Swedish network implemented in Jordan through your network of infrastructure projects that you build, the finance. It seems that you have a total solution for this. My strong recommendation would be, or request, is to look favorably to the idea of building the Jordan National Rail from Aqaba to Ranta, linking to all the borders. The existing structure is a narrow gauge, which is built like over 100 years ago when the Ottomans built the Hijaz Rail. But today everyone is working with the standard gauge, and we would like to see that also happening in the country. There is, I think, a great not only environmental value, but also economic value, because you're going to link the Gulf markets to the Mediterranean. And I think this is a fundamentally essential issue, not only for the economic side, but also for the political and everything else that is involved. So we'd love to get your reflection on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take one or two other questions, and then we can maybe divide those questions if that makes sense. In the back, please, Ruben. And if I can just ask you to please just introduce yourself briefly for our panelists. We all know you amongst this crowd of Jordanians. It's very incestuous, everyone knows everyone, but please for our panelists.
Ruba Darwish, I'm the GM of a system integrator called BNB, and I'm also a board member of INTAJ, the ICT Association of Jordan. My question is more relevant to women empowerment because we have an initiative called SheTex, and we're working on a unit within INTAJ that focuses on women enablement in the tech field and across all the pillars. So I would also like to understand more your views, what you have done, what kind of investments you've done in empowering women in the tech field if possible, and if it's focused mainly on specific verticals, if it's focused on remote work, if you've been able to support women that work remote in governorates, for example. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Behind themselves.
Good morning. I'm Zaytoun Al Hassan. I'm from Social Security Investment Fund. But I'm not here to ask a question. I'm here to express my gratitude and my thankfulness for the Swedish government who recognized Palestine in 2014. Minister Wallström, the foreign minister, was there and recognized it. And I always wanted to say thank you and to pay a big gratitude to her. Thank you.
So we have a question about congestion and the BRT and the potential railroad, and we also have a question about female empowerment and how can we. Who would like to tackle the first question, BRT context maybe?
Yeah, I can start on the potential Aqaba among transport system. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I think it's fair to say that the history and the track record that we have with working with EPCs. For example, as mentioned in Ghana, where we've grown a very interesting, and this is the largest investment project in Ghana in the railway sector since 1957. I think it's important that we work very closely with a potential EPC contractor and enabling potential Swedish supplies into that project. But I mean, would be delighted to discuss that more in detail, because I think this would be, I read about it before going into this on my flight yesterday, and I think this would be a very interesting opportunity.
Please.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just make a comment to building a transport system for a country, even though, as I said before, we have been making buses for 100 years and we love buses, we live from buses. We don't really have such a narrow approach so that a transport system should only be built up by one mean of transport. It's a multimodal system would work better for the city traffic of Amman, for the long distance travel in Jordan. We are happy to contribute to our part, and we will of course give arguments to the relevant stakeholders why we think a BRT solution could be a better and quicker and cheaper solution than a rail-bound system. But we will never say that Amman doesn't need a train system in the city, or that Jordan don't need a train system. Both solutions will complete each other. And I think that's important to remember. But speaking about BRT, because that is a solution very close to our heart, it's very interesting to look at what they have achieved, especially in Latin America. And also what is happening in many other parts of the world today, including Amman. You know better than I that there is a very ambitious BRT system to develop, if I'm correctly informed, about 100 kilometers of BRT solutions in the city. But that could be a very efficient, quick, and fairly cheap system a way to solve the big challenge we have with urbanization and increased need of transportation today. That's more of a big challenge we have. So I think you as a country, you need all good solutions you can. If you want to speak details about BRT system and buses, I'm the right person. Otherwise, we have the Swedish companies providing great bus system, and of course, I will not stop you from speaking to them, and Pontus would be happy to finance them also. But look around and see what has been done in other parts of the world, and you know how successful BRT has been. That's really a strong hint from my side. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Frederick. And on female empowerment, who would like to take that?
Yeah, maybe I could. Please, thank you. Maybe I could start answering that. I mean, female empowerment is very important from the Swedish perspective and for Swedfund. So we've been thinking hard on our role and how we can contribute to that. And what we're doing today are, I would like to mention two specific initiatives. And one is that we are member to the 2X challenge. This means that all investments we do are screened from a lens, trying to reach a specific level of investments that qualify one of the following criteria, and that is that they are owned by women, they are led by women, or they have solutions to women. And I think the ambition from the Swedish perspective is to reach, I think, 50% in our portfolio, and that has been, I think, not too difficult. I think we'll be quite successful in that. And the other one is how we work with our portfolio companies. And here we have an initiative called Women for Growth. So we're creating training and a network organization for women and future female leaders within our portfolio companies, training them and encourage them to grow further. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Christina, you spoke earlier about kind of the ability to borrow or lend at larger amounts, longer tenors, take advantage of Sweden's rating, AA+, AAA. The euro, obviously, and interest rates have fluctuated quite a bit. Rates are higher now. We have some bankers here amongst us. The chairman of one of the largest banks is here. We have some bankers as well. We've got the Jordan Loan Guarantee Corporation, and they're dealing with interest rates. How do you deal with this environment right now when people are saying interest rates are too high perhaps to borrow, the cost of debt is too high, maybe we should wait a little bit until things settle, especially in a country like Jordan that's pegged to the US dollar. People are expecting maybe another 100 bips or so over the next 6 to 12 months, maybe even more, before rates begin to come down? How do you look at that from a short to medium term perspective? Thank you.
I think it's a challenge for everyone at the moment, and there's no silver bullet really to this problem. I think that we need to sit tight a little bit, but of course we offer also floating rates in our finance, and that I think is the only way forward right now.
And just do the various solutions, do you work with the local financiers as well, with local banks, so that it can be a mutually beneficial relationship for both, from the Swedish end and from the local end as well?
Absolutely, and we work with the local banks in different countries. And if we're talking about the large transactions and the larger financing, then the SEK financing is 85%. That means that there is always the first 15% that we need to finance in some other manner. And there I think the local market has a big important role to play. So there we could absolutely work with local banks. We also work with local leasing companies in the markets where we are present with the financing company ourselves.
Great, thank you very much. Other questions from the audience? Otherwise, I'll go Socratic method and call on people. So, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Ask, or there's a question right there. Ali,
Ahmed Al-Zawi, and the founder and managing director of Clinical Evaluation Center called Train Pharma, which is European and US FDA-approved facility, as well as the managing director of Saudi Pharma branded generic company. My question, thank you so much for coming to Jordan and for your time. And the question is very brief. What is your minimum investment ticket size for private equity in healthcare opportunity? And what is usually your typical requirements to assess feasibility of the investments? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think it's difficult to say an absolute ticket size, but typically first-time investment, I think a reasonable ticket size could be 10 or 20 million US dollars. And then we're happy to grow together with the company and actually do add-on investments. But of course, it's as you know, we're an investment organization. It will be a due diligence process involving the investment team and our ESG team. But I'm happy to connect you with the healthcare team to start dialogue.
Thank you so much. By the way, you have the best track and trace and serialization technology made in Sweden. A system that I have brought to our company. So many congrats. Yeah? Thank you.
Great. Other questions, please, from the audience? There. Excellent. Karim Power, please.
Thank you, Karim Power. I attended COP15 in your neighbor's country in Denmark. That was, I think, in 2008, and they were handing out books that said 100 places to remember before they disappear. On the cover, they had interesting islands from the Pacific. Flipping through the pages, number 87 was Amman. So Amman will disappear because there will not be drinking water for the population, which is half of the country lives in the city. And that takes me to the question regarding renewables and the apex of connecting renewable energy with water desalination and conveyance. This is a very important subject for us here in Jordan. The other also question to Scania is what are you doing regarding other fuel? So whether it's you're looking at hydrogen or you're looking at electric buses, if that's within your plans to reduce CO2 emissions. Thank you.
I work for Social Security Investment Fund, and I was just wondering if we could, because I'm very fond of the Swedish pension fund, really, and the investment strategy of it. So perhaps we could get some advisory service or something like that through it, because it's doing amazing work, and I'm really impressed with it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll share the contacts later. That's fantastic to hear. And thanks for that feedback. On the water project, I think we've, as I mentioned to you earlier, on the project in Ivory Coast. I mean, this is a project that we've rolled out, and we are rolling out together with the EPC contractor now. It's a very complex setup, given that we need to have access to over 1,000 wells, and that is done through electrifying those wells. But it's a very smart solution, and it allows actually for a quite material project to be rolled out. And it's actually a project that has been initiated by the Irish government. So I think that is also something we can discuss more in particular, and how we potentially could replicate that structure for a month.
Great. I think we only have room for about one or two more questions before we end the session. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Could I answer this guy?
Absolutely.
Question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Just a quick comment about the water issue first. I mentioned before that we have been involved in biogas production out of wastewater, and that's definitely a project we would be very keen on participating in Amman or elsewhere in Poland. We could also bring other Swedish companies who are willing to bring the expertise in the biogas production part, and cleaning or using your wastewater is of course also a way to secure supply of fresh water later on in the chain. But to come back to the specific question, what is Scania doing to come up, well, to stop being the guys with dirty diesel trucks and come up with some new alternatives? Well, as all of you have noticed, the whole automotive industry is going through a major shift. Electrification is one of the strongest trends we had in the automotive industry for a long time, even though it's not new. Electrical vehicles have been on the agenda before, but now it's definitely here to stay. Our company is also convinced that electrification would be one of the solutions for the future. We are investing heavily in development of electrical vehicles, but there are still certain components, I would say especially batteries, that is not fully up to our expectations in terms of capacity, price, recyclability, and so on. So there are issues. Still, we deliver. We have a zero produced electrical vehicles today that are running with customers, but we don't believe that all customers are yet willing to pay the price for it. They will cost 2 to 3 times of say, a traditional vehicle with an internal combustion engine. Batteries needs to be replaced. The autonomy is more limited than for a diesel engine. So there are constraints. I am convinced, so we say our 4,000 engineers, that this will change dramatically over the 5 to 10 years to come. But in the meanwhile, we also need to do something here and now. And also, I believe that the future might need more solutions than one silver bullets that the diesel engines has been for heavy commercial vehicles. I think we need to look at more solutions, and there we are also very much into different kind of biofuels. Today we have trucks and buses running on basically all available commercial biofuel. That is biogas, it is HGO, it is biodiesel, it is ethanol, and so on and so forth. And we have engine technologies running on this. This is today's not a rocket science. It's something that has been proven. It's sometimes proven for decades. We have, for instance, one good example is the public transport sector in Sweden. Today is running 95% of non-fossil fuel. In Stockholm, since 4 years back, it's 100%. The different use of different biofuels, very roughly, 30% is biogas, quite a big chunk is HVO and biodiesel, 5-6% is electrical vehicles today. So that's about the ratio we see today. So that's what we have to offer. Me and my colleagues are more than happy to discuss that more in detail for specific needs you might have. But definitely, we need new solutions for the future.
That's very interesting, thank you. I'll be remiss not to at least mention some finance items before we close. One is just on financial inclusion. Jordan has made a big push into financial inclusion. Understood that was a key initiative for Swed Fund. We'd love to hear maybe a view on that. And the other, I think Pontus might have spoken about this earlier, was about green bonds and how that by 2030 the goal is to reach 50, have that constitute 50% of the portfolio. Jordan, through His Majesty and the Crown Prince, have made a strong commitment for Jordan to, in terms of supporting climate change, and there's a big focus on renewable, and many companies now, major banks, are trying to access the private markets, the capital markets, to support their balance sheets. A lot of companies are doing the same. How viable is a green bond offering for companies of that sort? Thank you very much. And I'll ask you to be brief. I'm being looked at to try to finish quickly, but I wanted to take advantage of this, of your expertise. So thank you. Maybe Frederick, I'll start with you on some financial inclusion, and then move to Pontus on green bonds, or vice versa. You guys pick. We'll be democratic.
Sorry, you meant Pontus or?
Either one. We're happy to.
Yeah, I can, on the green bond, on the green loan facilities that we are, of course, actively looking to grow our balance sheet to up to 50% from green loan facilities. I think it's fair to say that we need to work on projects like we talked about today. We need to talk about renewable projects and renewable energy, like we mentioned in Angola and in the solar panel project. We need to work on the water projects referred to in both as the opportunity in Jordan, but also on transportation. It's something that we have to do, and we need to do it quite quickly, given the ambition and the goal we have. So absolutely, I think we are all in the right spot here to talk about this, and given the initiatives from the Iranian government, I think it's very interesting.
Thank you very much. Sorry, maybe Hassan, you want to take that financial inclusion?
A few words on that. And actually, I said we have a sector called financial inclusion, and it's actually the biggest sector in terms of in our portfolio. I think it's about 60%. And it's been one of the most important parts of our completing our missions, and quite successful. There's a lot of risks involved in this. I mean, lending money to unserved groups, but we have managed, I think, to work with professional microfinance institutions, banks, and other types of companies, and seeing extremely good results. It's extremely fascinating and positive to see what kind of things you can achieve by providing money to somebody who can invest in a business, buy something, to resell it, and how that can generate income. It's really fascinating and really key component in reducing poverty.
Well, thank you for that. We may not be on Swiss or Swedish timing, we're a little on Jordanian timing. We thank you for that. I'd like to ask you all to thank all our panelists for coming to Jordan.